That's it. So letting your head roll to the right and to the left. And from letting your head roll a little bit from side to side, then find that comfortable place where you can settle the back of your head down on the ground. And then you could bring your hands onto the front of your body if you like. We're going to just gather our attention into our breathing for a few cycles of breath. And it's this opportunity to let yourself settle, to feel the movement of your breath in your body. And, this is the beginning of class, so we might be a bit unsettled, various things could be going on. So it's just taking that moment to see how it feels, to gather your attention into your breathing, to perhaps feel the front of your body responding to the in and the out breath. But also if, your breathing feels a little bit tight or you're unable to connect with it, not to worry, because we're going to be moving and then we'll come back to our breathing in a little bit. So you can keep your hands on the front of your body if you like, or you can bring your arms out to the sides. And if your legs are long, you're now going to bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And so, as I said, we're going to try in a few different positions with just sort of changing the position of where we have our feet. But what I'd like you to do to start with is not. Just try and have your feet in the sort of normal place you would have them when I ask you to bend your knees. And then you're going to let your knees tilt from side to side. And so this very familiar movement that we often do at the start of class. And as your knees tilt from side to side, you can just, notice what presents itself to you in your body. What do you feel? There's all sorts of things we could feel here. It could be about how the weight is shifting side to side in your feet as your knees tilt. It could be about how the weight is shifting side to side across the back of your pelvis. Or you might find that the movement starts to get into some sort of tight or creaky places, hopefully in a helpful way. Good. So that's just once, twice more in each direction. And then you're going to cross one leg all the way over the other leg. So you're going to cross your knees. That's it. And what I'd like you to do then is just to pay attention to your standing foot and perhaps bring that standing foot a little bit more centrally. So it's a little bit more centrally positioned on the floor. And then you're going to start to tilt your knees with your legs in this position and see how this feels. That's nice. So now it's a bit like the pelvis and the legs are perhaps all moving together as one unit. When the knees were not crossed, there's a little bit of side to side movement of the legs in the hip joint as well. Good. That's very nice. So just a couple more times, see how that feels on this side. And then you could change the cross of your legs and do the same movement with the other leg on top. That's it. And again, as you do this, once you've crossed your legs over, perhaps just paying a little bit of attention to positioning the foot on the floor so it's quite central. That's it. And then again, just tilting your knees from side to side and see how, if it feels different with the other leg on top. Good. Very nice. And you can do that once or twice more. And then you're going to uncross your legs and lengthen both legs out on the floor and give them a little roll or a little bounce. That's it. And then just maybe allow yourself a cycle of breath with the legs just lying long. And feel the breath come in, feel the breath leave you. And perhaps once more, Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Good. And then from here, you're going to bend your knees again and stand your feet on the floor. But this time, I'd like you to take your feet wide apart. So they're as wide as the narrow edge of your mat. That's it. Good. And then in this position again, start to tilt your knees to the right and to the left. And pay attention, that's it, to what both knees are doing. So are both knees moving over towards the side, as long as it's comfortable. They don't necessarily have to go all the way. And it might be that it's easier on one side for the knees to move a bit further. So going to the left and to the right. And when you've done this a few times from side to side, you have then got the option, if it would feel comfortable for you, of taking the knees all the way down towards one side and having a few breaths there. And it might be that if you have a cushion to hand, that you want to slide a cushion under one of your knees. Let's be careful getting the cushion, Sheila. You don't want to inadvertently, yeah. I mean, I think if you feel that you need a cushion, it's always definitely worth getting one, but don't sort of strain in some awkward position to get one. Good. So have a few breaths. And if your knees are falling down on one side, you can let your head roll in the other direction. And just give yourself a couple of breaths there. And then, of course, you can do the same thing on the other side. You can always come back to a little bit of tilting the knees in between sides if you like. And if you're going to come into the second side and let your knees rest, let your legs rest there for a few breaths, then come on to do that now. And let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. And then in your own time, you can bring your knees back to the center. You can fold your knees into your chest. And you've got a couple of options here. You can hold around your knees. You can just sort of lie quietly. You can do a bit of rocking from side to side. A little bit of circling around the back of your pelvis. You can also, if you like, take your legs up to the ceiling and give them a shake out. And your arms, yeah. That's good. Very nice, very beautiful. And from here, you can take your time. You can maybe have a couple of breaths on your side. We're going to make our way over into standing. So just, yeah, give yourself the time you need. There's no rush. As you're here very promptly today, which is impressive on a Monday morning. Much appreciated. So I hope, yes, it does seem a little bit dark. I think I'm used to being the other way around, so but hopefully you can see me all right. So we're going to come into standing. And once you arrive in standing, we're just going to start with a bit of this sort of loose, easy swinging twist, swinging the arms from side to side, letting the feet move on the floor. Good. That's it. So swing the arms, let the feet move. Very nice. Good. Just noticing how this feels in the shoulders, across the upper back. That's it. And again, as I said, we're going to be focusing particularly on the legs and the feet today. So this is a chance to release the shoulders, and then our focus will come back to our legs and our feet. So from there, we're going to then settle our feet down so they're a little distance apart. I'm just wondering what I can do about lights. And we're going to come into a forward bend. I just want us to we're going to do a few forward bends and do a few different things. So the first thing I'd like you to do is maybe just come forwards. So you're coming to rest on your elbows and you're having a couple of breaths there. You're just checking in with your lower back, seeing how that all feels today. And from there, if you're happy, you can go a bit lower on into your forward bend. Good. And let your head hang. Good. That's nice. Very nice. And then you don't need to stay in this forward bend for long. We'll do that in a moment. Let's stay a little bit longer. So why don't you then sink into your heels, roll back up into standing, or walk your hands up your thighs if you prefer. Just let yourself arrive back in standing. And then we're going to come into another forward bend. And this time you're going to think about having movement in your forward bend. So you're going to come forwards and you're going to do that one where you sweep your arms side to side around your feet. So as long as that feels okay for your lower back. Just see how it feels to be in movement in your forward bend. And do something that feels comfortable and easy. Good. That's nice. And then sink into your heels, maybe just release forwards in the center for a moment. And then sink into your heels, roll back up into standing. Good. Okay, perhaps give your legs a little shake out now. Because I'd just like us to see. Yeah, I'd just like us to do one more forward bend. And in this one, we try and stay a little bit longer and we more sort of quiet and still. So it could, so just see how that feels to perhaps stay a bit longer in your forward bend and focus a little bit more on your breathing. So again, you could start with your elbows resting on your thighs if you like, and you could stay there. You could release down into your forward bend. And again, feel that you can bend your knees as much as you like. You could even bring your chest quite close to your thighs when you bend your knees. And then just see if you can bring your attention to your breathing. And rest in the forward bend. Feel your breath come in, feel your breath leave you. And of course, if it doesn't feel pleasant, then do come out. But just maybe see if you could have another 2 or even 3 cycles of breath. So as you exhale, patting into the heels, letting the head hang. As you breathe in, feeling the breath come into your body. And on your next exhalation, you're going to then start to make your way slowly back into standing. Good, and have a little shake out. So I think maybe we should stay up and standing for a moment after all those heads forwards, and perhaps just come back to swinging the arms, being upright. Good. Very nice. Then we're going to try a little forward bend, which is not something that I usually teach, but it's something I've been doing a bit as a, and I thought, so I'm just going to show you, and it might be that you need to adapt this. So you're going to try going into a forward bend with your legs crossed, one leg crossed in front of the other. Now, to make it easier, the front foot can be a bit further forwards. If you're trying to make it really hard for yourself, you try and bring your feet so they're level. And that is going to make it harder. So the foot can come further forwards. And the other thing you could do, if you're really thinking, oh, I'm not sure about this, is to try this one, going with your fingertips to a wall or to a sofa. So you might think, oh, this is really easy. And that's absolutely fine. So you're going to cross one leg in front of the other leg. And then you're just going to see, how does it feel to start to go forwards? Remember, you could go to a wall or to a sofa. And sometimes it's harder for the back knee to bend. So just sort of see where you get to without pushing yourself too much. And you might feel a little bit unstable, so just be aware of that as well. Good. And try and let your head go. Try and keep as settled in your feet as possible. Good. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Very nice. And you don't have to stay there for long. You can sink into your heels. You can come back up into standing. Good. You can uncross your legs. You can give them a little shake out. And then we'll try the same thing with the other leg stepped forwards. So whichever foot wasn't crossed in front, you're going to try the same thing on the other side. So cross the feet over. Remember, if your front foot's further forwards, that's going to make it a bit easier. And if it's maybe further out to the side, if it's right next to your other foot, if you really want to challenge, that's going to make it a bit trickier. And then how is it to fold forwards? Let your head go. What you tend to feel in this one is that the back leg stretches a bit more. Good. That's very nice. Well done. Good. Yes, it's harder to perhaps feel steady. Well done. Very nice. Good. That's it. Let the head go. Yes. Well done. Very nice. And then when you've had a breath or so there, sink into your heels, come back up into standing. Good. Give your legs a little shake out. Okay, so we're going to then come on into a little balancing movement, which we might find a bit easier after that one. So settle your feet down a little distance apart. We're going to start by taking our right arm up towards the ceiling. So we take our right arm up, and as we do so, we start to shift our weight into our right leg and foot. So we're going to be doing the one where we're bringing our weight into our right leg and foot, and we're going to be bringing the left foot off the floor, catching the top of the foot or the trouser leg, yeah, so that our knee can drop down towards the floor. Catch the top of your leg, your trouser leg, use a belt if you have a belt and you like to do that. Good. And then your raised arm could come down onto your breastbone. Just see if you can settle. So your hand on your breastbone, letting your knee drop towards the floor. Good. Seeing if you can have perhaps another couple of cycles of breath here. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Good. And then come down, have a little shake out. We'll try the same thing on the other side. So once you've had a little shake out, again, just settle your feet back down a little distance apart. You can look down at your feet for a moment, then stop looking at your feet, find a point to focus on, and then start to reach up with the other arm. So we're going to be shifting our weight onto the other foot, the one we didn't stand on last time. So we can start that process of shifting our weight onto that second leg and foot. So the other foot starts to feel light. We can pick the foot up off the floor. We can catch the top of our foot. We can catch our trouser leg. We can use a belt. We're letting our knee drop towards the floor and then bring our hand down onto our breastbone. And just see if we can settle there. That's nice. Yes, and then if it's tricky on that side to catch your foot, just slide your toes back on the floor behind you and come onto the top of your toes. So that's another alternative on that side. Sheila, see if you can let your knee drop down to the floor a little bit more. That's it. Very nice. Good. Okay, another breath or so, and then come down, have a little shake out. And we're going to come back into another forward bend, but this time I'd like you to take your feet wider apart. So if maybe as wide as the narrow edge of your mat, and if you're facing the long edge of your mat like me, you can just, guess that. And so sinking into your heels, I tend to like to come forwards and rest my elbows on my thighs in this one, at least to start with. You could release your arms all the way down to the ground. It's the bin men are out there now. Good. So keep rooted into your heels. That's it. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. And you can, in this one, if you like, do a little bit of moving side to side. So as you bend one knee and then the other knee, you can be shifting your weight from side to side a little bit. So that's an option, again, if you feel that you'd like to have a little bit of movement in your forward bend. Try and let your arms be as sort of floppy and relaxed as possible. whenever you're ready, sink down into your heels, come back up into standing. And when you arrive back up in standing, you might maybe want to have your feet not quite so wide apart, but wider than we normally have them in standing. And you're going to be bending your knees and looking down at your feet. So just feel that you're bending your knees forwards over your feet. And then from here, we're going to cross one leg over the other leg. So at this point, you're not looking at your feet, but you're maybe looking a bit more down rather than straight ahead. So we've crossed one leg over the other leg. Good. And then you're going to bring your hands into prayer in front of your chest. So just see if you can settle in this position. So our standing leg is bent, that knee is bent, and then cross the other leg over it. Good. And try to feel that your shoulders are over your hips rather than you're leaning forwards. Good. Good. Just give yourself again maybe another cycle or two of breath here. It's always a bit harder work to balance when our standing knee is bent. Good. Come out and have a little shake out. And then come back to that you're standing position. So again, we had our feet a bit wider than we normally do and our knees bent. And so I just want you to move from this sort of wider apart feet to shifting your weight onto the other foot, so the one we didn't stand on last time, and crossing the other leg over it. Good. So we've got this bent standing knee, we've crossed the other leg over, we're bringing our hands into prayer pose again. And then we're just trying to have this sense of ourselves. Are our shoulders over our hips? We feel that we're sort of upright rather than leaning forwards. I find with my knees bent, it's more comfortable if I'm looking slightly down rather than straight ahead. So that's maybe down a couple of meters ahead of me. Just let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Good. And then come out and have a little shake out. Good. So we're going to do one last little bit of going into a forward bend in standing. So if you need to face the long kayak, we're going to go into the middle of your mat, because we're going to go into a forward bend and then we're going to take our feet a little bit wider. So you're going to go into a forward bend with your feet, a small distance apart, and then we'll progressively wider once you're in the forward bend. So move down into a forward bend with your feet a little distance apart, and then stay there for a couple of breaths. That's nice. And once you've gone down, yeah, that's it. So go down into a forward bend with your feet a little distance apart. Stay there for a couple of breaths. Then take your feet a bit wider. So this is like your feet being how they were a little while ago, like the sort of narrow edge of your mat. So not as wide as you can possibly go, sort of half midway, and have a couple of breaths there in that midway point. That's nice. That's nice. And then from there, you could see what's it like to take your feet a bit wider apart on the floor. So can you again walk your feet a bit wider? That's it. Good, walk the feet a bit wider. So obviously don't take your legs to a place where it's starting to feel that you've gone too wide. Keep your weight well back in your heels. Yes, Aditi, it's quite nice to be doing what you're doing, which is bending both knees, resting your elbows on your thighs. The other thing you could do is, once you've taken your feet wider, is to start bending one knee and bending the other. So you're shifting your weight a little bit from side to side. You don't have to do that, but if you'd like to do that. And it could be that you've got your fingertips on the floor, or it could be that you have your elbows resting on your thighs. And so as you do this, just check if you are bending one knee and bending the other, just checking that your knees are happy with that, because sometimes one of my knees gets a bit grumbly when I'm doing that. Good. And then you could have a couple of quiet breaths in this wide forward bend. And you've got options for your arms. So you could hold your elbows. You can rest your hands on your ankles. Sometimes it's quite nice to rest the back of the hands on the ankles. Or you could rest the back of your hands on the floor with your fingers pointing away behind you. So these are just a few options. There might be something else you want to do. And you also might be getting ready to come out of this. So whenever you are ready to come out, you can sink into your heels. You can roll up into standing. Good. And then you can gradually just bring your feet back together and give your legs a little shake out. And we're going to come to the backs of our mats now. We're going to move down through a forward bend, not staying long next, we've done lots of forward bends, on into dog pose, down into child, and then we'll do a few hands and knees things. So if you come to the back of your mat, you could bring your hands together in prayer pose. And you could maybe just take a moment here to settle in standing, to feel your feet on the floor, to feel the contact of your hands at your heart, and to feel the movement of your breath through your body. Let a breath come in, and as you exhale, you're going to take your arms down and then up. You can feel long and tall for a moment, let your shoulders drop down away from your ears, and then start to bend your elbows, bend your knees, gather your arms in, roll down into a forward bend. And from that forward bend, walking on into dog pose. And seeing how that dog pose feels. We'll be coming back into dog, but yeah. As we've done quite a few forward bends, it might be that the back of your legs are not feeling too tight. And it might be the dog pose. You know, of course, keep bending one knee, bending the other. You know, how does it feel across the back of the shoulders? Very nice. And it's up to you. You can have another few breaths in your dog, or you can fold down into child pose when you're ready. So folding down into child pose or kneeling, if you can, just taking a moment to let the weight of your body settle on the ground. Feel the breath come in, feel the breath leave you. And then when you're ready, you're going to be coming onto hands and knees. And we're just going to do a little bit of cat and a little bit of tail wagging. So these familiar hands and knees movements. So yes, settling yourself on hands and knees. And that's it. When you're ready, you come into some cat movements. So rounding your back to the ceiling, dipping your spine down to the floor. Good. That's very nice. You can also do a little bit of your tail wagging. So that's very nice. You can pause in the center. You can, imagining you have a tail, wagging your tail from side to side. And then I'd like you to carry on with some more tail wagging and some more cat movements, but drop down onto your elbows and your forearms and see how it feels in this position, just really so we can take a bit of weight out of the wrists and the hands for the moment. So it's quite nice when you round your back to the ceiling in cat. When you dip your spine down, be careful that the back of your neck doesn't sort of overextend. It's also quite nice doing a bit of tail wagging when you're down on your elbows. From there, we're going to come back into dog pose, and we're going to try play around with a couple of different leg things in dog. So one of them is to take your legs wide. The other one, you might want to look at me for a moment, but you probably don't need to. The other one is to bring one of your feet into the center and then cross the other leg around the back of it. So sort of what we did in a forward bend in standing. So I can talk you into that as well. So it might be that you want to do a couple of dog poses. It depends how long you want to stay in any individual dog. So come into a normal dog pose first of all. And then, yes, you could play around with taking your feet really wide to start with. So as wide as the narrow edge of your mat. And if I take my feet really wide in dog pose, I then like to bend my knees a lot. So feet really wide, bend the knees a lot. It sort of feels a bit froggy, a bit like a frog. And then it can really help release the shoulders. And we can have a couple of breaths there. And if you want to come down in between dogs, you might want to come down from that dog, give your arms a little shake out. You can sit in kneeling for a moment. And then we can try the dog where we step one foot round the back of the other leg. So if you're going to do this second dog, so what I tend to do is if I'm coming into standing, this is again, just want to play around with, I will bring one foot towards the center, so the foot that's going to stay in the front, and then I cross the other leg around the back of that foot. And then just see how that feels. And it tends to be for me that my front knee is quite bent, and then the back leg that's got around the back, I try and sort of send that heel down and back. So that knee's less bent, but that really depends, I think, on individual legs. So again, you can try this on both sides. So one foot stays in the center, and then you take the other leg around the back of that foot. Good. Just notice, notice what you want to do with your legs. Because again, yes, I tend to bend my front knee and then maybe sort of lengthen into my back heel a little bit. But just sort of see how it goes. And then finally, after doing all these funny dogs, you can just come into a normal dog and just see, and you might want to come out of dog for a moment and then back into dog and just see how it feels to do a sort of normal dog pose with your feet for you, a normal distance apart. Yes, do come down, bring the backs of your hands together perhaps before you do this last. This will be the last dog pose. I never like to say that because I usually realise it's more. But yes, coming into sort of one last, just sort of quiet, normal dog and see how that feels. And maybe after having our feet and legs in all these different places, we're more attentive to them in our normal dog. And perhaps it also helps it to make it feel a bit easier. Good. Very nice. Lovely. And from this last dog pose, you can of course have another few breaths there. You're going to fold down quietly into child or kneeling. And just gather your attention into your breathing for a few cycles of breath. So just come into a sort of quiet, comfortable place. So if you're in child, just noticing how your shoulders feel and make sure they're as soft and relaxed as possible. Notice where you've placed your elbows on the floor and just check that it's the most helpful place for them to be. And there's perhaps another cycle or two of breathing, gathering your attention into your breath, noticing where you feel your breath in your body. Good. Okay, from kneeling, we're going to come on into, from child pose, we're going to come on into some sitting things. So I'd like you to start with leaning back on your arms and bringing your legs long and wide. So again, we're going to keep up with this, our sort of theme of having our legs in these sort of different places. So obviously this is wide to start with. And you can lean back onto your arms. And, you know, you can give your legs a little bit of a roll. So it's really variable, this one. So I know some of you are really fond of this. So if you're someone who's very happy sitting with your legs long and wide, you can always have your hands in front of you. If it's a bit more of a challenge, you can keep leaning back on your arms. You can keep sort of rolling your legs. You won't be here too long. Every so often you can stretch into your heels, spread your toes, and then relax your legs again. So like with a lot of these sitting things, it's about giving ourselves some time and coming in and out of things. So let's maybe just have another cycle of breath with our legs long and wide. And yes, and sometimes a little bit of movement here is the other thing, a little bit of swaying from side to side. Yeah. But we'll come back to this after we've done a few things where we change the position of our legs. So from here, you can lean back on your arms and just see if you can bring your feet into cobbler pose without using hands. And how does that feel? So now we've got the feet close together and the knees out to the side. So this is another sort of possibility for sitting. Yes, so again, if you feel that you want to do a little bit of rocking here, that's a really good thing to do. You don't have to. You can lean back on your arms. So yeah, rocking is one thing. Leaning back on the arms is another thing. Good. And just again, yeah, how does it feel? Can, you know, in all of these things, we're just trying to, as much as possible, let our legs be heavy, give the weight of the legs to the floor. From here, we're going to come on into pinwheel. So we can bring our top leg over, that's it, and then slide our top leg back. We can do a little bit of our circling in pinwheel. We're going to do a little bit of circling. We're going to come into our pinwheel forward bend in a moment. So just circle around. If you feel that, if you like doing the one where you give yourself a hug in pinwheel and let your head fall forward. So if your neck and shoulders, or neck or shoulders, or anything upper body feeling stiff or creaky, then it is quite nice to do this one. Let your head fall forwards. That's it. And then we're going to come into our pinwheel forward bend and do a little bit of breathing there. And I'm just going to give you a focus for your breathing, a very simple focus. So fold over that knee that's coming out to the side and just see if you can find a comfortable place to be. So sometimes it's nice to have the elbows on the floor and your forehead could rest into your hands. That's one possibility. Or I know for some of you that you can bring your forehead down to the floor, or you could rest your forehead on the back of your hand. And the first thing you're going to do here is just to gather your attention into your breathing and feel the inhalation and the exhalation for a couple of cycles of breath. And then from noticing your in-breath and your out-breath, for the next couple of cycles of breath, can you start to become more aware of the spaces between the in-breath and the out-breath? So at the end of your inhalation, maybe there's just a quiet moment before your out-breath leaves you. So just start to notice that sort of end of the in-breath before you exhale and the end of the out-breath before you breathe in. Maybe just for one more cycle of breath. And then walking your hands in towards you, coming back upright in pinwheel. And then I'd like you to lean onto this. So the knee we folded over, I'd like you to lean onto that hand and arm. And then we're going to start to move the back leg. So we can start to draw sort of a bit of a circle with this back leg. We can take it, we can go back a little bit further if we want. But I'm starting to think particularly about you bringing your back leg over the front leg. So for quite a while, the knee leads, but then as we start to cross our leg over, the knee can't go any further, and so it's our foot that perhaps circles round a bit more. That's it. So just sort of see a few times. Where do you get to? And yes, we are going towards our favourite cow legs. Yeah. So eventually, you're going to end up with your top leg crossing over your bottom leg. Now, there's a few options here. If this doesn't work for you, you could keep your foot standing on the floor on the other side of your knee, or you could lengthen out your bottom leg. Yeah, so that's particularly if the bottom knee isn't happy, you could lengthen out the bottom leg. So we've come, yeah, we're in some permutation of cow legs. Yes, can we have a little wiggle wherever you are? So at this point, if you're really off, lopsided and your top sit bone is not on the floor, it's probably better to either to bring your foot back to the other side of your knee and just stand on that foot, or to lengthen your bottom leg out. And then what I'd like you to do wherever you are is just, can you do quite a sort of light turning movement? So again, this is a sort of good test of how cow legs feels, because if how you're sitting doesn't enable you to turn a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left, it might be better to lengthen out the bottom leg and then turn each way. And then we have our little cow legs challenge, which is to work out which is our top leg, our top thigh, and turn towards that top thigh and stay there for a breath or two. So Aditi, it's the other one. You're turning towards that's it, that's your top leg. Good, I think that's it, well done. Everyone else I can see has turned. Yeah, well done, good. Okay. If you're happy in cow legs, you can turn back to the center, you can have another breath or two there. Otherwise, lean back onto your hands and just uncross your legs. Give them a little bit of a roll on the floor. And then we'll take our legs wide once more before we do all of that on the other side. So come back to sitting with your legs long and wide. And, how wide you take them is completely up to you. We can let the legs roll a bit, wobble a bit on the floor. We can stretch into our heels and relax the legs. Some of you might like to bring your hands forwards. Some of you might want to just do a little bit of sort of side to side swaying. Good. And some of you might be very keen to come out of wide legs. So from here, we'll lean back on our hands and come on into cobbler pose. Good. Did any little rocking or circling movements? I thought we could do this side lengthening one in cobbler pose this time, where you lean onto one arm and hands. That's it. And the other arm comes up and over. So that's a possibility, if you like, on this side. Very nice. And then let's make our way over onto the second side of pinwheel. So let your top knee come over. Let that leg slide back. Come to a little bit of your circling inside two of pinwheel. And again, if you want to do the version where you give yourself a hug, let your head fall forwards. Feel soft and wide across your upper back. You can do that. As we did on the other side, we're going to come into our pinwheel forward bend and gather our attention to our breathing. So on the other side, I came onto my elbows and brought my forehead into my hands, and that was actually quite a nice place to be and focus on the breathing. So if that's not what you usually do, you might want to give that a go, or you might want to go lower down. And so as we did on the other side, start by becoming aware of your in-breath and your out-breath as they move through you. And then from becoming aware of the inhalation and the exhalation, you're going to see how it is to bring your attention to the space between the in-breath and the out-breath. So there's maybe a little moment at the end of the in-breath before the out-breath leaves you. And there's maybe a little moment at the end of the out-breath before your next breath comes in. Just perhaps for one more cycle of breath, noticing those moments of stillness. And then walking your hands in towards you. And we'll lean on that arm, so that knee that we just folded over, we'll lean onto that arm. And then we'll start this sort of circling movement. So we're drawing a sort of semicircle. So it can be helpful to take the leg back a bit. So with our toes, we're drawing this sort of semicircle on the floor with our back leg. And as we start to go and cross our legs, it's no longer the knee that's coming forwards, but it's very much the foot. So when we're going back, the foot leads. When we're coming forwards, the knee leads. But at that point where the legs are crossing, our toes start to lead. And so that's it. From drawing this circle, or this semicircle with your top leg, you're eventually going to end up in your cow legs on this side, or wherever we can get to on this side. So it might be that the foot needs to come back onto the other side, or it might be that we need to lengthen out our bottom leg on this side. The bottom knee is not happy. Good. And then wherever you are, and I suppose I didn't say this last time, wherever you are, there's maybe a little bit of wiggling and settling down so that you can feel your spine is long and tall. You can, of course, use your fingertips to support you. But ideally, it's quite nice if we can feel light in the upper body and then turn a little bit from side to side. So turn to the right, turn to the left, just trying to feel sort of light in the upper body. And I suppose that lightness comes in the upper body from being able to settle the weight of the legs down on the floor. Good. And again, we'll have our little cow legs test. Can we work out which is our top thigh? And can we turn towards our top thigh? That's it, well done. Good. And just to have a breath or two there, all the while trying to let the shoulders settle, trying to let the weight of the legs and pelvis settle on the floor. And yes, you can lean back, lengthen your legs out. Now, we've got a little choice now. In a moment, well, it could be immediately or it could be in a moment. So if you like sitting with your legs long and wide and want to do a little bit more of that, you can do. Otherwise, you're going to lie down onto your backs and we're going to do some things on our backs. So just make that choice now, whether you want to do a little bit more wide leg sitting or whether you want to lie down. There's probably no choice at all on a Monday morning. So yeah, that's it. And I think most of you know Sarah's choosing to sit. So yes, if you've chosen to lie down, you're going to then bring your palms over your eyes and you might want to rub your hands together. until they're warm. You can, yes, you can also do that in sitting, can't you? You can bring your palms over your eyes if that's comfortable. And if you're lying down, once you've got your palms over your eyes, you could then let your head roll a little bit to the left and to the right, just easing your head from side to side. And if you're sitting, it's nice to make sure your head is sort of falling forwards a little bit into your hands. And you can also bring your hands down onto the floor and let yourself fold forwards a little bit in your wide sitting. So if you're on your back and you've been letting your head roll from side to side, then find a comfortable place where you can settle the centre of the back of your head on the floor. And just for a moment, wherever you are, let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. And in lying down in a moment, so Sarah, whenever you're ready, making your way over into lying in a moment. And lying down, we're going to bring our attention to our feet and organise our feet on the floor. So if our legs are long, we can bend the knees and stand the feet on the floor. And organise your feet on the floor so they're a little distance up, maybe a generous distance apart, not really wide, but we're going to come into bridge pose. So maybe just organise your feet how you normally would for bridge pose, in the sort of position where it's easy to sink down into your feet. Actually, they look quite wide there, Sheila. That might be a bit too wide. It's a compliment. That's it. And you're going to then, in your own time, roll up and down into sort of 2 or 3 easy bridge poses. And very much have your attention with your feet. So this feeling that we go into bridge pose by sinking down into the feet, perhaps the sort of pelvis, maybe the bottom of the pelvis tilts off the floor, then the rest of the pelvis, then we pick our spine up off the ground. We keep sending our knees forwards over our feet. But yes, your sort of primary focus in this is planting down into your feet. And just, 2 or 3 times rolling up and down, keeping it sort of easy and fluid, not pushing anything. And then the next time your pelvis comes back onto the floor, just keep it there. Let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. And then you're going to cross one leg over the other leg. So like we did right back at the beginning of class, so your knees are crossed. That's it. And then you might want to adjust the foot that remains on the floor so it's a bit more central, because you're going to see now, how does it feel to go into bridge pose with just this one foot on the floor? So sinking down into that one foot and letting your pelvis come away from the ground. And don't be too ambitious of going particularly high in this bridge pose, because you've only got the one foot. You're going to feel quite a lot less stable. So it would be plenty just to get the pelvis off the floor. Good. And you're going to try this a couple of times with your legs crossed in this way. Can you sink into that standing foot? That's it. Let your pelvis come away from the ground. How stable is that foot? And when you've done it a couple of times with your legs crossed that way, you can change the cross of your legs and put the other leg on top. And do the same thing with the other leg on top. So a couple of times you're sinking down into your standing foot. So again, you might have adjusted it so your standing foot's a bit more central. And then how does it feel to press into that one foot to let your pelvis come off the ground? It probably feels a bit more effortful than when you have 2 feet on the ground. Good. Very nice. And then when you've done that a couple of times on the second side, you're going to uncross your legs. And again, come back to planting both feet on the floor. And see how it feels again to roll up and down a couple of times into bridge pose. That's it, very nice. Yes, lovely. So perhaps when we come back to both feet on the floor, it suddenly feels a bit more effortless, having gone through all the effort of trying to do it with one foot. So 2 or 3 times, roll up and down into bridge pose. Good, and think about those really planted feet. That's nice. And sending your knees forwards over your footprints. When you've done 2 or 3 bridge poses, you can fold your knees into your chest. Again, you can have a little roll around, you can do a little bit of rocking from side to side. You can take your legs up to the ceiling if you like. Have a shake out. And we're going to finish with a little bit of breathing, and you can do this breathing either lying down or sitting up. So if you'd like to come to sit and do a bit of breathing, then you could come and come and sit with your back against the wall. If you prefer to lie down, you can stay lying down. So just decide what you're going to do. I'll just put my phone onto silent. That would be very good for breathing. So what I'd like you to do for this breathing exercise, and this is something we will continue with next week, is to start, if you're sitting, rest the backs of your hands on your thighs with your palms turned upwards. And if you're lying, rest your arms on the floor beside you with your palms turned upwards. Okay. So just take a moment to feel a cycle of breath move through you, and then I will say a little bit more about what we're going to do with our hands. Just feel the breath come in, feel the breath leave you with your palms turned upwards. And then you're going to receive an inhalation with your palms facing the ceiling. And then as you exhale, you're going to turn your right hand palm down. So as the breath leaves you, you turn your right hand palm down. And then as you breathe in, you turn that hand back up to face the ceiling. And with your next exhalation, you're going to turn your left hand palm down. And then as you breathe in, you turn that hand back up to face the ceiling. With the next exhalation, the right hand turns palm down. And then as you breathe in, you turn your palm back up. The next exhalation, the left hand turns palm down. And then as you breathe in, you turn that palm back up again. So we'll just carry on going from side to side like that, alternating. Each time you exhale, you're going to turn one of your hands down and you're alternating from side to side. And when you breathe in, both palms are facing upwards. So it doesn't matter if you lose track of things, it's very easy to do that when we're focusing on our breathing. But if you find that's happened, then just come back once more to, as you exhale, turning one hand down. Breathing in, that hand turns back up again. So both palms are up. As you exhale, the other palm turns down. Let's just carry on for a few more cycles of breath. Breathing in, both palms up. Breathing out, we turn one palm down. So maybe do that for 2 more cycles of breath. So come back to breathing in, both palms up. Breathing out, turning one palm down. Breathing in, both palms up. Breathing out, one palm down. And then just settling yourself. If you're lying, you can have your arms on the floor or your hands on your belly and have both hands either palms up or palms down. And the same if you're sitting, you can rest your hands on your thighs, either both up, palms up, or both palms down. I'd like you just briefly to come back to that focus we had for our breathing when we were in pinwheel, the pinwheel forward bends. So of starting by feeling your in breath and your out breath, having them as your attention, as your point of focus. And then starting to bring your attention to the space between the in breath and the out breath. So noticing that point at the end of the inhalation before your out breath leaves you. And at the end of the out breath before your inhalation comes in. And just let go even of that focus and just let yourself rest. So if you're sitting, you could lie down for this last minute or so, or you could just stay sitting quietly. So just letting your body rest. You can be aware of the support of the ground beneath you, perhaps the feeling of the air around you. And of course, the flow of the breath within you. So thank you, everyone. Take your time to come back round.